Hello again, and welcome to Denton's Tales. In this video, I'll be looking at aspects of superstitions and beliefs from the so-called Viking Age, which is usually dated 793 to 1066 AD, though these things I'll be talking about, of course, originated long before that time period, and many lingered after as well for quite a while. Some, in fact, still linger in Iceland even today, which I'll come to in a moment. Now, Norse mythology is made up of, you could say, several strands, and there are genuine religious beliefs, rites of faith, that are not superstition. They are based on ideas and things that cannot be proven to be impossible and often do make perfect sense. Things that cannot be said not to be true and are thus not superstition by dictionary definition. Then there are stories that would have been closer to entertainment than to something that was actually believed in, though they could have had elements of genuine belief in them. And then there are tales that would have been used educationally, if you like, especially perhaps for children, things to explain natural events, the weather, for example, or aspects of everyday life, to put understanding on things that were hard to understand before science came along to, tell us what they actually were. Again, perfectly understandable, of course. If you don't know the real cause of something, well, you try to come up with some sort of an explanation that kind of makes sense. The Old Norse religion and mythology are very intertwined in the form in which they have come down to us, since most of our knowledge of religious belief is contained in poems and sagas that were themselves made up of several of these strands, if you like, as I said, containing genuine religious beliefs mixed in with stories that were just entertainment. So one has to try to sort out the genuine religion from the fairy tales, if you like, to take note of something a character in the saga does that shows a genuine religious practice, even if they're doing it in an obviously fictional setting. Like to put it into a medieval context. Sir Goody Goodness, clad in gleaming armour and mounted upon his trusty steed, is about to go forth to slay a fire-breathing dragon that hath laid waste the land and captured the fair princess. Oh, Shokara. And the bishop blesses him with holy oil and gives him communion bread and wine and pours holy water over his sword. Go forth and slay thee the foul beast, good Sir Knight. Well, the bread, wine, and holy oil and water are, of course, genuine religious belief, but the rest is clearly fantasy. At least if there were any fire-breathing dragons trotting around in the Middle Ages, capturing princesses, well, nobody told me. So it is with many Old Norse poems and sagas. The genuine religion is often hidden among the noble deeds and the exciting adventures of the characters. Plus the fact, of course, that we get these stories not directly from the Viking Age. No, though they date from even further back in history in most cases, but we get them from Christian retelling of them some 200 years after the old ways had all but vanished. And we can't always be certain, you see, what has been altered, watered down, a bit Christianized, or left intact. And sometimes we have to look at the religious beliefs of similar peoples who perhaps bordered on Scandinavia, such as the Sami or the North Germanic tribes, who we do actually have better information about and would probably have had similar practices. So, let us take a look at a few beliefs, superstitions, fairy tales. Well, however you view them is entirely up to you. I have no intention of deciding which is which on your behalf, though I do have a couple of thoughts on some things. Yes, I get thoughts occasionally. One Old Norse belief, rather than a superstition, I suppose, involved the rainbow. That beautiful multicolored arc that we see across the sky after rainfall, which they knew as the Bifrost, the fiery, shimmering rainbow bridge that connected Midgard, the realm of mortals, to Osgard, the realm of the gods. It was also known as the Osbjörn, or the bridge of the Aesir, in other words, the god's bridge. Now it ended at Himinbjörg, the home of Heimdall, the god who had responsibility for guarding it. And he was there, keeping an eye out for fire giants, normal giants, dead people, and assorted other unwelcome things approaching to begin the end of the world, the great battle of Ragnarok. Whereupon he would sound his mighty horn, heard across the 9 realms, to warn the gods that they were really in deep doo-doo. That was a very handy job, actually, for him, since he could work from home, as we would say today. And it seems he had a more than plentiful supply of mead as a sort of fringe benefit. Odin himself mentions how the warder of heaven does the good mead gladly drink. Sounds like a good job. Mind you, hopefully he won't be unconscious on the floor, happily snoring off the after effects of the glad drinking of the good mead, as the fire giants step over him to cross the Bifrost and attack Osgard. Frankly, giving a sentry on duty what amounts to his own pub doesn't seem to me a very good idea. But then, who am I to question the king of the gods, you know? No, I'm watching for those fire giants, yes. They won't get past me. Nor all those dead things. Like I smell them a mile away. Yes, Heimdall on Gilly. Yes, not really very comforting thought. A superstition, I suppose this time, involves the undead, and undead in a particularly nasty form. Oh yes, very much so, making Count Dracula and Nosferatu look positively charming chaps by comparison. And that was known as a Draugr. Those who have died, but they have not gone either to Valhalla to feast with the gods, nor to Hell, to the care of the goddess of the dead, herself also, of course, called Hell, because, well, neither place really wanted them, and I'm not surprised. Nasty, bad-tempered, cruel, or deceitful persons could become a Draugr. And I think I know a couple of people who qualify for that status. Oh, yes. And they would live on in an undead state in their graves, fiercely defending treasures buried with them, or actually resurrecting themselves and going in search of those who had wronged them in their life, or they considered had wronged them, entering people's dreams, even physically entering their houses and doing all sorts of nasty things, especially leaving not very nice, now, how shall I put this delicately, gifts of a, shall we say, intimate nature that would have been much better left outside, preferably in a privy, if you see what I mean, depositing their little gifts of nature in people's homes just to let them know that they've been visited. Oh, yes. You would know a Draugr had favoured you with an offering. Yes. As Hamlet puts it in the Shakespeare play, you would nose them. Charming. Now, they weren't ghosts. No, they were solid. They still had their corporal bodies, and they smelled of death, which I suppose they would, since they were dead and probably a bit mouldy by that time. But the good news, oh yes, there is good news. The good news is that they could die a second time, which is a neat trick if you can do it, if they were burnt or dismembered, or they just decayed and fell apart, which they would probably do after a while a bit, I should think, anyway. But to prevent any trouble with them while waiting for them to, decay and fall apart, the coffin of anyone suspected of being likely to become a Draugr, well, it would be raised and lowered several times before burial, and it would be turned round and round and moved in different directions, so as to confuse the potential Draugr as to where it had come from. Or the door it was carried out through, well, that would be walled up, since, you see, it had to return to that house the same way that it had left it. So the door would be walled up and the Draugr couldn't get back in, sort of just banging itself against the former doorway, I suppose, which would hopefully speed up the falling apart bit, I should think. Now, iron scissors could be placed on the chest of the corpse to keep it in the grave, or the toes. The toes would be sewn together, or spikes put into the feet to prevent it walking. Of course, all that was only done if there was a suspicion that the dead person would become a Draugr. So if some really nasty, miserable, disgusting old fart that everybody detested went belly up, well, they'd make pretty damn sure he or she wasn't coming back. Oh yes, get the sewing needles and the bag of nails. A variation of the creature with similar highly antisocial personality traits existed, but in its case, the undead was unable to leave its grave or burial mound. It couldn't go bringing charming little offerings to people, and it only attacked those who trespassed on its property. So, you could stand there some way off and go at it without really any great risk of its retaliation. Just don't get too close. No, stay out of grab range and you'll be fine. Or, as they'd say here in Ireland, I shall be grand. The hell hest. Oh, now. The hell hest, or hell horse, a three-legged, partly rotted corpse animal, said to be ridden by the goddess of the dead, Hel, is a very interesting and rather forbidding creature, though it contradicts completely with accounts of Hel herself as quite a welcoming goddess, which is how she would have been seen in pre-Christian times, even laying on feasts for honoured arrivals in her realm, making them comfortable and welcome and brewing special mead for them, as she did for Balder and his wife. But her evilness, well, see, that was really created for Christian consumption later on, when the old stories were written down. The goddess was said in some tales to ride forth on the hell hest in times of plague or famine and gather in those who were ready for her realm of the dead. And of course she will probably ride the hell hest into the final great battle that will end the world, Ragnarok. But, as I've said, the hell hest, well, it really smacks more of later Christianization of the original tales when they were written down in the 13th century than of actual Old Norse belief, given, well, Hel's actually reasonably normal persona in previous times. And, a three-legged rotting corpse horse going around dripping maggots, it really doesn't fit in with that. Plus, a three-legged horse wouldn't have given a very comfortable ride, would it? It would have sort of lurched to one side all the time. It would have been a bit like riding a drunken camel. Nor, of course, was Hel herself originally seen as half dead and half alive. One side of her face a normal woman, and the other a rotting corpse with maggots dripping out of an empty eye socket sort of thing, as was her later personification. And, why would she look like that? After all, she wasn't dead. No, those residing in her realm, they were dead. It was the realm of the dead, after all. But she was not. Nor, of course, would the dead have been rotting corpses either, since the Norse Hel, was spelt with one L, was pretty much a dead version of life. People, doing much as they had when they were alive, eating, drinking, having sex, playing games, and so on. But it was Christianized to a version closer to the church's idea of hell, spelt with two L's, of course, with fire and brimstone and laughing demons prodding screaming souls with pitchforks. Burn, baby, burn, baby, burn. You get the idea. The aurora borealis, that beautiful shimmering curtain of green or red light seen in northern latitudes, produced of course by the interaction of charged particles from the sun with atoms in our upper atmosphere, was known to the Norse as the North Light, and that was regarded as being reflections from the shields and the armour of the Valkyria, or the Valkyries, as it is in English, as they rode across the sky to carry out the commands of Odin. Now, clearly, that is simply superstition, since we know what the true cause of it is. But what about those same Valkyria taking the warriors aloft to feast with the gods in Valhall, the hall of the warriors slain in battle? Now, is that religious belief, or just a silly superstition? Both Christians and Muslims have the same belief, insofar as a reward for someone up there, wherever that may be. To them it is in heaven, to the Norse it was Åsgard. Also up there, though not somewhere up among the clouds, just a high place like a mountain or a high plateau. The concept is the same, though the method of getting up there, of course, differs considerably. Borne aloft by angels in one case, or carried by warrior women in the other. But is there really any difference? I mean, the Valkyrie could simply be seen as angels, and the existence of angels, which are genuinely believed in by Christians to this day, well, it can't be proven, nor can it be disproven. So the concept certainly, well, hovers. It really hovers on the boundary between genuine superstition and religious faith. I mean, the Valkyrie, possibly simply a Nordic version of angels, and, well, warrior women sent by Odin would have seemed entirely credible in Viking times. It would have made perfect sense. There were spirits that inhabited and protected the Landmatir, as well as spirits of just about everything else. I mean, in those times, well, pretty much everything had spirits in it, on it, around it, protecting it, or whatever. And the Landmatir were very much respected, and they were honored, and not just in ancient and very highly superstitious times where they believed in just about anything. No, for the Landmatir, they are still regarded with respect in Iceland even today. Not as a bygone superstition or a romantic story of ages past, but as an actual belief in the existence of the Landmatir. The spirits that, well, they controlled the safety, the well-being, and the fertility of the land itself. And they could be linked to a particular place, like to a mountain or a prominent rock or a tree. And places where they would be were noticeably more beautiful than surrounding areas, which I suppose would make sense. The Icelandic Book of Settlement actually mentions an ancient law in Iceland that prohibited any ship entering harbour with the dragon or sea serpent head still mounted on the bow post, like that one over there, as they put it, with gaping mouth or yawning snout. And that was banned because it might frighten the Landmatir, and nobody wanted to do that. As I said, belief in the Landmatir is still strong in Iceland, a very genuine belief, not just a nod to superstition, like saying, "Oh, bless you," if someone sneezes, or, not walking under a ladder. No, it's a genuine belief. There are many stones around Iceland sacred to the Landmatir, and they are not ever mowed closely. Children are not allowed to play on or near them. And here's an interesting tale. When construction was about to start on a runway for a Cold War-era United States Air Force base, the Icelandic foreman had a dream that a woman of the Landmatir came to him, telling him to delay moving a boulder in which her family lived, to give them time to move out. Now, he believed that, and this is the point of this. He believed that, and he halted work for 2 weeks. No Icelandic workers would even touch the stone, despite American objections. And I can just imagine the Americans, of course. "Damn those guys, they must have been hitting the magic mushrooms again." Yes. Until the woman returned in another dream to tell him that the Landmatir had left, whereupon workers moved the stone. Now, that is genuine belief. I think you'll agree. A number of building projects in Iceland have actually been halted or altered to avoid disturbing or annoying the Landmatir. And the government actually set up a bureau that must be applied to before work is carried out on any ancient sites that have any sort of religious or mythological connections. Attempts were made by skeptical developers to move some sacred stones. Ones they thought, "Oh, silly old superstition, just move them. No one will notice. Move them. But the interesting thing is that those attempts completely failed, and they failed really miserably. Heavy construction machines broke down whenever they moved in to try to shift the stones. Workers fell ill. Cameras that were brought in to photograph the stones couldn't get an image. And that's a strange one. And the stones were then left where they were. Well, mainly because they simply couldn't move them. They didn't really have a great choice. Firstly, due to the mechanical breakdowns, and secondly, because the workmen refused to do anything or go on trying. I mean, who wanted to get sick, obviously? That made perfect sense. And roads, for example, would often be built around the stones. I've actually seen a housing estate in Iceland with a large boulder sitting in between the 2 lanes of a road. The bolts that were put into it to attach chains to drag it away were still in place, and the road was then simply built around it. After all attempts to move it had failed. The interesting thing about that is more than just people's beliefs. After all, no amount of superstition or belief could make construction equipment break down every time any movement was attempted, nor could it make workers become sick. And that just seemed to lend credence to the beliefs. You know, I try to picture that same scene if it were here in Ireland. Sure, no, sure. The lads can't be moving that stone. No, not at all. Oh, not at all. You couldn't be doing the like of that, sir. You see, there's fairies living in it, sir. Aye, the fairies, the little people. And they don't take kindly to being disturbed, so they don't. Oh, no, not at all. You wouldn't want your milk to go sour now, would you, sir? Or your cattle to die? Oh, no, you wouldn't want that. Oh, no, you would not. Yes, well, try that here, and the men in the white coats would come, and they would take you somewhere with nice, soft, padded walls where you wouldn't hurt yourself, and then more nice people in white coats would come to talk to you, and yes. But, you know, it shows that the old ways are still very much alive in Iceland, you know, more so than, well, anywhere else in the world, which I think is nice. And I wouldn't try to move one of those stones for all the tea in China, as the old saying went. Anyway, I don't drink tea. Also still believed in by Icelanders are the Huldafolk, or the hidden people, which are elves, if you like. Rather than seeing them as just quaint mythology or silly old fairy tales, actual belief still lingers in that amazingly beautiful country, even if only subconsciously in many cases, or very consciously in others, with painted stones outside houses which are there to welcome them, for example, and tiny little houses, well, rather like dolls' houses that are found dotted around the countryside for them. And that's not a joke or a tourist gimmick. That is quite serious. I mean, no one here in Ireland would do something like that for the little people, the leprechauns, you know. Say with something for American tourists who just love that sort of thing, you know. Gee, honey, look at this little leprechaun doll I got. Hey, ain't that cute? You know. Yes, you know. It nobody here would take them seriously at all. Another belief of the Viking Age was a ship, but not just an ordinary ship. Oh no, not by a long way. The Nagafar, or the Nail-farer, which was a unique vessel. Oh, unique is the word. And it made the infamous dragon ships of the Viking raiders seem really rather effete, you know, certainly lacking in their fear-inspiring capability when seen against the Nail-farer, or the Nail ship, if you prefer. I mean, long ships are just a lot of old oak planks held together with iron rivets. Well, nothing very scary about that, is there? Even with a fearsome-looking dragon or sea serpent head stuck on the front end. But the Nagafar, oh, well, she had real class. Oh, because she was constructed from toenails and fingernails removed from the bodies of the dead. Yes, top that one if you can. You show up somewhere in that ship and you upstage everybody. There is absolutely no comparison, no competition, nothing. They haven't a chance. She was the vessel that would, under the command of Loki, sail forth from the realm of the dead to transport huge hordes of Jotnar, or giants, to fight in the great battle that would end the world, the aforementioned Ragnarok. So, well, even in that, she far outclassed, I mean, any old longship with 50 or 60 men just going to pillage a monastery and, you know, burn something somewhere. To put it in the words of that well-known Jewish expression, to you, you may be a ship, but to the Nagafar, you ain't no ship. Naturally, I suppose nobody among the living wanted to supply any more shipbuilding material than was absolutely unavoidable, so they actually used to trim the nails of corpses before burial, or even remove the nails altogether in order to deny the Jotnar their specialist building material. Well, I mean, that made sense. The nail-farer was required to transport those hordes, but no finger or toenails meant no shipbuilding material, no nails meant maybe no ship, and no ship, well, that could mean no Ragnarok. A highly desired situation, I'm sure. Snorri Sturluson in his Prose Edda refers to the nail-related funeral rites, saying how they were trimmed, lest unpared nails from the dead be available for the completion of the Nagafar, the ship used to transport the army of Jotnar and Ragnarok. He quotes a character in one of the poems who warns about the danger of untrimmed nails, saying, "The ship is made of dead people's nails, and it is worth taking care lest anyone die with untrimmed nails, since such a person contributes much material to the ship Nagafar, which gods and men wish would take a long time to complete." And so say all of us to that one. Now, mistletoe. Mistletoe acquires its status as something to kiss under from the Old Norse, though frequently seen as of Christian origin, given its great popularity at Christmas. But despite its use during that most Christian of the festivals, it is in fact totally pagan, resulting from the death of the aforementioned god Balder, the beautiful god beloved of everyone, so much so that it was decided to make sure nothing could harm him, and his mother, the goddess Frigg, called on all things to swear a binding oath never to do him harm. Iron and every other nettle, the earth and the rocks, all the animals, the birds, everything that crawled and swam, trees, plants, poisons, and sicknesses, they all swore the oath. But Frigg overlooked one thing. Well, I mean, with all the thousands of things that she was getting to swear, it was understandable that she might overlook something, and she did. She overlooked one plant, the mistletoe. Loki didn't. Oh no, no flies on Loki by a long way. But a delighted Frigg informed the assembled gods of the good news. "My son is safe, for all creation has sworn never to do him harm." Well, nice, you know. The other gods reacted in, well, what might be seen as a rather strange way. "Nothing can harm him? Great! We need some entertainment around here. Let's all throw things at him. Where's my axe?" Yeah, so they all started chucking things at Balder, while he, I'm sure, was going, can't hurt me, can't hurt me, can't hurt me, or, you know, whatever Old Norse version of that. Now, the gods, well, they were having a great time. Oh, they were having a lovely time throwing things at Balder. I mean, nothing could harm him. Arrows, spears, tree trunks, rocks, you know, chuck them, throw a mountain at him. Didn't matter. They just bounced off him. He was invincible. Obviously, they had very little entertainment in Asgard. But Loki got hold of the blind god Hodor, and he handed him a length of sharpened mistletoe. Go on, join in. Yes, go on, join in. You have some fun too. Just because you're blind doesn't mean you can't have fun. Go on, throw it as hard as you can, he said, pointing Hodor in the right direction, who threw the mistletoe, and it struck Balder, piercing his heart and killing him. Yes. I'm sure Loki said something along the lines of, "Oops, didn't see that coming. I'm sorry about that." How he got away with that one, I'm not really sure. Frigg's tears became the white, pearl-like berries on the mistletoe, but she forgave the plant. It had, after all, been used by deception. It was not guilty of any wrongdoing. It was thus innocent. And she decreed that it would never again be used as a weapon, but it would be a symbol of love and peace. And she promised to send a kiss to all those who passed beneath it. So that's why you kiss someone beneath a sprig of mistletoe. But the name isn't actually Norse. It comes from Old English, the Anglo-Saxons calling it misteltan. Mistel meaning dung. Yes, that's right, dung. And tan being a twig or a branch, since the plant is a parasite and it's spread by bird droppings. I really hope, I really do, that you won't be put off that kiss with your beloved under the sprig of mistletoe by knowing that the plant over your head came out of a bird's eyes, and it's literally called shit on a stick. Charming. To end, there's a supposedly Old Norse story about that dreaded number 13. Oh, number 13. Though it's probably another bit of later Christian embellishment. Now, this story is that there were 12 gods assembled having fun, chucking every conceivable type of anything that would normally kill someone at the seemingly invincible Balder when Loki arrived, making 13. And subsequently, as we've seen, due to his trickery, Balder was killed, thus making 13 an unlucky number. Yes, that sounds like a later Christian idea, taking the 13 disciples Last Supper theme and adding it to Norse mythology, since as I've said, many Norse pagan ideas and stories were adapted to make them more in line with the Christian doctrine when they were written down in the 13th century. So I really think this one can join the goddess Hel and the Hellhest as, well, dubious in the extreme. I hope you've enjoyed this little look at Old Norse beliefs and superstitions. And until next time, I shall say farewell, goodbye for now, and hopefully see you in the next one. Bye for now.